Oh, they're in there
And
already.
welcome to Life Support Live, the weekly live show that explores how Star Trek can help us to boldly go in our own lives to better ourselves and the rest of humanity.
As you all know, a famous starship captain once said, and as another famous starship captain also said, no matter where our journey takes us today, we'll still have a little fun along the way.
Hey everyone, I am clinical psychologist Dr. Ali Mattu.
And I'm Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek. One of us, you may find, is a real doctor.
Or you may not find that as you watch the show. We will let you decide. On this episode, we are talking about work relationships. Again, today's episode theme is inspired by Star Trek Lower Decks. We're not going to be getting into spoiler territory for Lower Decks, but we are taking inspiration from Lower Decks. So go ahead and comment below on what is your favorite example of a work relationship from Star Trek. All
Yes.
all
All
50
Star
plus
Treks.
years. I'm
Yes.
sporting my 50-year badge today, Larry. I don't know why. This is one of my favorite ones of all my badges.
I have, I have,
Larry,
I have the Roddenberry 50th that's kind of filigreed. I love that one.
yes, I know
Yes.
that one. Yeah,
Yes.
that one looks a little bit more TNG com badge, right?
No, it's just the badge. It's just the
Oh, it's just
zero.
a badge. Okay.
It's inscribed in the O of 50, maybe. But to me,
Right.
it's just
Oh, yeah, yes. I know that one. I know
I
that one.
just. But it's a
Um,
circle, not an oval. So anyway,
Larry, what for those of our friends here who are joining us for the first time, what is Life Support Live?
well, Life Support Live is like we say. It's boldly going through uncertain times. In case you have been in a coma or a cave, you can look around. There's plenty to be uncertain about these days. I guess there always is. It just seems doubly, triply, 47z times that way these days. No, Life Support Live is we're going to geek out on Star Trek and do it through a mental health lens. So we're going to have some
Mhm.
fun and maybe even learn something along the way, Dr. Ali, or at
Yeah,
least have a
yeah,
takeaway for daily life. Thanks
yes,
to you. The briefing room, we're going to is where we'll geek out on some of these examples, starting with Lower Decks. But guys, we will try not to be too spoilery, and we will move on from Lower Decks. So we're still
yeah.
looking at all of Star Trek. Okay,
Yes. We
and
will. I mean, I think that's part of our mission, right? Is this
mhm.
this is a we want this to be a welcoming place for fans of every different generation, every different iteration of Star Trek. Larry and I love both. Wait, no, both. It's not just the original series and Next Generation. There's a lot
Is it?
more.
This is. It's later than 1988, I think.
Yeah,
Okay,
take that. We love all. We love all versions of Star Trek, and we can have friendly debates and poke fun at elements of them. But we're just happy there's more Star Trek to discuss. So and speaking
and
of
more.
discussion, there are a lot of ways for you to be involved. So this show is about all of us. It's about the community. It's about everyone who's here, from our regulars like Linda and Zahir and Libby and Tim and Jared and Scott. Welcome back to all of our regular lifers here on the show, and it's for all the new folks as well who are going to be joining us. We always love seeing your comments. We learn so much from each other. It's a big way in which Larry and I have fun. And there's also a way for you to join if you want to be the third box on our show. We open up the comms at the end of the show, and if you message us at Life Support Live host, we might be able to get you on the show.
I don't
So
know,
with
Charlie. My mama raised me never to be a third box.
Hey, well, over here we're all about additional
Oh, wait, that was
boxes.
that was wheels. Yes, boxes are fine. Let's let's get
Let's
to it.
open up the briefing room. So today we're talking about work relationships, and this is again inspired by this week's episode of Lower Decks. But Larry, I gotta say, like, this was not the original idea I had, but then you recommended it. I originally wanted to talk about productivity, but you recommended work relationships, and when you did, I was like, yes, we need to talk about this because this is something I've been struggling with this week. And before we
Oh,
get into the Lower Decks,
okay.
talking about the real world connection here, I work at a very small startup team. There's about 10 of us. And when I joined the team, like a week before coronavirus really hit hard in America, the goal was always for us. We were going to be a global team, but once a month we were always going to come together for a week, and in person we were going to do work, and then go remote in person once a month. That's never happened. I'm working with people I've never met in person. And there are other people who have had jobs where now their whole team is remote. There are some people who are working as a freelancer, or they're working just by themselves, or there's other people who might not have work and are feeling very isolated right now. So when you brought this idea up, I thought this is perfect for us to discuss, because we spend so many hours of our lives working with other people. In some way, they're our most important relationships, but you and I haven't really talked about that here. So I thought this was a great idea for us to
Well, I'm glad it's good for you. No, as you said that, it struck me how, since the pandemic and since all I mean, I've had a lot of fun teasing the world about how it's just discovered Zoom and virtual meetings, where like Portal 47, we've been doing that for 5 years. But as you spoke there, I was thinking back to when I was editor of the Star Trek Communicator, which was the longtime official magazine here in the U.S.
Longtime reader right here.
Oh, there we go. So,
Yeah.
but
I might even have an issue back here somewhere. I know you do.
Yeah, they're all over there. No, it's like when Dan Madsen, the founder of the official fan club, when he was editing the magazine, they were all based in Denver, or Aurora, just outside of Denver, suburb. When he wanted me to take the reins as they were growing, and I was editor for 7 years, it suddenly was not, like an in-office publication, but also the tech and the logistics got to very quickly to the point where we could do that. But all the years I was editor of the Communicator, we were all over the world. We had, our art director was in Montreal, and I was here in LA, close to the studios. We had freelance writers all over the world. Our press was in, oh my gosh, I forgot. Our press was somewhere, maybe upstate New York or something.
Wow.
And that's a yawner now, but this was like 98, 99, 2000.
Yeah.
And we barely had email. We sure didn't have, we couldn't, YouTube and all that, but we were emailing. We went from FedExing floppy disks to just emailing stories back and forth.
I was going to ask how you sent the stories back and forth. So it actually started with FedExing. You were FedExing floppy disks.
And when I was proofing pages, I would get a big box, and I would actually mark up like double full-size pages by hand, but they would come FedEx. A lot of times I'd have, if I knew it was a delivery day for, I was at Paramount, I would just have the thing sent to Paramount, and I was up in archives, like marking pages because we were behind. But it struck me how, and at the time I remember thinking, this is amazing. We're all over the world and doing this job, and this is incredible. How Star Trek-y is this? And now it's common. I had not thought of it that way until you were talking just then, but it was like, it's not like, oh, look at me, we're pioneering this, but it's incredible to think that was, because that's where we were, and that's what we could do, and it evolved even as we were doing it. And now that's ho-hum. That's, we're not sending hard copy pages. Well, maybe some people are, but now we just mark up our PDFs, and get them back and forth.
I'm curious about that, Larry. Like, because the same issues that apply to having good working relationships now definitely applied then. So how did you and the rest of the Star Trek Communicator team align on goals? How did you coordinate? How did you build trust with each other? Like, a lot of the modern technologies of Zoom and very easy conference calls and those things weren't really around then. So how did you all coordinate and work together?
We had phone, Zoom, conference call, Skype, no visual. People would tend to like fly, have a meeting, the meeting you never had with your team.
Yeah.
Things would start like you'd have a relationship somewhere, and then you would hire in or invite somebody to collaborate, or freelance or whatever. Generally, people would submit either queries, or you would know it. You just had a relationship. And then, like Dan said, it's time. I want you to edit the magazine. I'm going to step back and do this other.
Yeah.
And we were all pretty much on the same. We were Star Trek fans to begin with, but then we knew things like work ethic and how we worked and all that we worked out. But then we also had our own independence, our own way of doing things. Now, what changed was when the game company Decipher bought the official fan club. That was the thing, because now suddenly there's people in a culture there was a work relationship schism, friction point, because suddenly it wasn't our cozy little bunch anymore.
The culture
and Dan
changed.
wasn't even calling the shots. He was kind of put out to pasture as a consultant. And now I'm suddenly working with people who have been hired by a game company to run the magazine part of a official fan club, with the way that used to work, with mail before email or before social media. This is before social media. Okay, so that was a lot of adjustment, and I was like number 2, and all of a sudden I was the number 3 person, and not getting to just call my shots and not have to answer. That's the only time outside of my news years in a more corporate setting that I had to be corporate, and it was all long distance, and it was people that I'd met on either one trip or not met at all for 5 years. So I feel for you with your And we didn't
I think
social or Zoom or Skype or anything. So
you're speaking to some things that I think are going to come up in the counselor's log about having some sense of shared mission. That probably came from like everyone was also a fan, but also was interested in writing.
Well, a lot of these people weren't. Now, see, when I corporate, it was people that I was
before
about Star Trek. Yes. Oh, earlier. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, earlier. Like the things that made you all a good team, that you trusted each other, that you had some kind of relationships with each other, you saw each other, and then you all had the shared identity and shared goal. I think those are definitely going to be things we keep talking about in this episode. I just need to respond here to Jared. Yes, we are both wearing blue. It's not a conspiracy, folks. It's life. We're both wearing life support blue. We both need it today. I think we both need the life support.
This has been an interesting week. Yes. I was going to say we're both in blue because we're trying to support the mystery of that blue species with the on life support on lower decks with with the sweatback pointy ears, but the like gills in the cheeks that seem to be a brand new species that we don't know what they are.
Right.
It's our way of demanding answers.
Yeah, Larry, if I could just vent for a second. It's been tough to be a Northern Californian this week. We have a massive heat wave here, and normally when you have heat this level, there's always power concerns, and our electricity company here has said, please reduce power. Don't use your air conditioning. So normally what you do in those situations, what do? You go to the mall, you go to a movie theater, you turn off your AC. Can't do that. No, you go to the beach. Right, okay, so you go to the beach. We can't go to the beach because we have the most wildfires that are burning in the state in history. This week we broke the records for two of the largest fires that have ever happened in California are happening right now. I live in Silicon Valley, so we're surrounded by 2 mountain ranges. Both those mountain ranges are on fire right now. Air quality here is bad, so you can't really go to the beach. You can't go outside. It's been a tough week, and
those little wavy roads are all choked off for traffic.
You can't get there because of the So it's a tough week. I honestly have no idea what I'm gonna do with my daughter today. After Life Support Live ends, I have no idea how I'm gonna keep her occupied for the rest of the day. Last week we went to the beach and had a wonderful time, but
wherever they are, turn to our chat group. We'll get to the topic here, and then I'm sure
we'll get to the topic. Yeah, we have
all kinds of answers for you. When in doubt, turn to the lifers.
Oh man, when in doubt, turn to the lifers. And Tim, yes, happy birthday. Tim said the 50th badge is perfect for his upcoming 50th birthday tomorrow. Happy birthday, Tim! Happy birthday! May you live long and prosper, and also boldly go. I think those are standard Trekkie greetings there. All right, so Larry, Star Trek. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
The topic at hand. So
well, I'm glad you're breathing with us still, because I mean, knock wood, it's all up north. There's no fires down south. So.
Yeah. I'm glad.
Colorado's having a bad time with fires too right now.
Yeah, and it's a lot of, the fires were triggered by a series of lightning strikes that happened over the weekend, but the lightning strikes happened during a time of intense heat and intense dryness, that those were driven by climate change. So it's extraordinary events on top of a virus, on top of a just lightning. So it's a tough time. But Star Trek always helps me cope. We have Star Trek. So let's talk about that. So in this episode of Lower Decks, this is episode 3 now, and there were a lot of different themes at play, but work relationships, especially, I would say 2. The captain and the lower decker, and first officer and a lower decker. Yeah. So those relationships were sort of the core story here. So, I don't know what more we can say without getting into spoilers here. There was a crisis situation that was unfolding on an away mission as well as ship side, which seems to be the MO for Lower Decks, is there's a crisis here, and then there's like another one on the ship happening. They're
Michael
both happening.
Miller would be so proud. They're doing A story, B story so well. But yeah.
They're doing A story. Yeah, totally. It's a return to like
story, The ship story was person made. It wasn't like external. It was a top down crisis that was a created crisis. Which
and you could
I don't know. I have a lot of empathy with that right now in the world. I think a lot of our problems right now have been person made. But just
and I would argue that the ship-based conflict was one that came out of not the best work relationships, especially between a captain and her crew, a superior and their what are they called? Not peons.
Underlings?
Underlings? There's a better word. Crew? Maybe, I don't know.
Well, I was being generic. I was not in the military setting. But what I sent you an image because I think we get all... Maybe you don't want to show it because it's spoilery. But what I thought was interesting is if you reflect on this plot, and there is something to reflect on, it wasn't just that the captain causes the situation, but she's doing it in reaction to... It's that classic thing on your boss beats on you, and then you turn around and you beat on your crew.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think I can show this image. The
negativity gets passed along. Well, this was interesting to me because it's like the sitcom where the parents are, the kid comes up and says, "Oh, come on, Dad," and they're like, "Oh, you're right, son," or "Come on, Mom."
But we see that conflict play out there on the planet as well. It's all the red shirters, all the command. See, this is why we have blue shirts. We're not causing problems. We just want to do our science, take care of each other, do some good medical work. Blue shirters, they don't cause any problems.
And
right,
do
Larry?
your cat karate jump if you have to.
Yes. Only in self-defense, though.
Only in self-defense.
But there's a lot of examples here of work relationships that we can dive into, and a lot that our community has been sharing. I want to go back here and highlight some of them. Zahir talked about Bashir and Garrick and their work relationship. Their very complicated relationship. It's a wonderful example. Libby mentions O'Brien and Rom, Worf and O'Brien, and Bashir in the bar fight. So there's a lot we could talk about O'Brien this week. I'll leave it at that.
Well, now that he's so famous and all.
Yes. Libby also mentioned another favorite working relationship, the holographic doctor and himself. Janeway and Seven, I think that's a really fantastic relationship. We can talk a lot about. Bashir,
a lot of these Star Trek relationships, we've been talking about people, relationships, situations, themes, and all this. But when you're talking about Star Trek work relationships, since like Lower Decks, so many of the crews, especially Voyager, especially Enterprise, they're
Yeah.
cooped up.
Yes.
At least talk about DS9 being the show that didn't go anywhere, but at least they could leave
Yeah.
the station, even if it was to go fight in a war and come back, or explore. Next Gen was a little freer. Original series was a little freer, but some of these are especially. It's like the work relationship is the only relationship they have. It's like turning it off
Yeah.
is difficult
Yeah.
to do, which can be another factor of a work relationship.
Well,
Also,
and this is where
we talk about
there's a
Seven. We talk about Seven and Janeway. I'm like, when were they not having a work relationship? I mean, they did.
yeah.
They had to let their hair down, so to
It's
speak.
it's there's a lot of interesting parallels to what we're dealing with now and how distant we are from each other, and there's a lot of parallels to serving in the military and being on a ship that might be far away or a station that's far away, and also to space exploration and being stuck in the space station where a lot of the boundaries of relationships get blurred where they're also your only social contact in terms of space and the military. But in terms of right now, we're so distant from each other, and our only in-person relationships for most of us are the people we're with, and yeah, things are getting really blurred. Here's the problem though with Deep Space Nine, Larry. It's what Libby says right here. I think all working relationships on Deep Space Nine are my favorite. Yeah, the relationships on Deep Space Nine are always gonna win. They're always gonna win for everything. Um,
And so DS9 is interesting, and I sent one. It's not very illustrative, but illustrative. But everything on DS9 like was baptized in fire. Like all the
yeah,
relationships on DS9 were contentious. If you think about it, it starts off with talk about the boss on the boss on the boss. Picard sending Cisco there starts off contentiously, and then Cisco and Kira, and the one I sent, Kira and Bashir, when he's blathering on, and she's like, my your frontier or my people. So glad that the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
natives could
That's
help you
great.
out, Doc.
That's a great
Every and
moment.
O'Brien, just the continual 24/7 eye roll at
Yeah.
everything Bashir. So it's just that
And I
whole.
mean, Bashir creating a pretty hostile work environment for Jadzia. Like, when you rewatch Deep Space Nine, if you haven't rewatched it recently, gosh, it's really hard to not notice all the harassment that he gives Jadzia. One more thing I want to mention.
Years old that could take it.
Yeah, and one more thing to mention, we're not alone here in struggling with this, Larry. Jared says, my normal job is the same way, only 1/3 of my team is in the US. I have only been in the room with my boss twice. I think Zahir also mentioned, in the before times, I worked in an office with hundreds of attorneys. I love the environment of mentoring and being mentored in person. Now we're futzing around with MS Teams I don't like.
Everything's in Mississippi. I don't understand. Oh,
Oh, if you don't know Microsoft Teams, Larry, if you don't like Skype, you are not gonna like.
I no, I've not had to deal with. I've had nothing that uses Teams. I've seen it arise in the era of like, oh, we got to compete with Zoom. This is like everything. Zoom was like Star Wars, and everything
Mm.
else has been like, oh, we've got to compete. We got to have a sci-fi. We got
Everything
to
else is like Battlestar Galactica, and yeah, no, I know.
the
Libby
black hole.
says,
Yeah.
working at home is a mixed blessing. We've had a lot of people quit with no hiring in sight. I can't possibly do all the work while I can't do all the work I'm doing now, or could be fired for working unauthorized overtime if I try. I like my job enough, but if it wasn't high risk, I'd be looking for another job.
Libby, you're at
This
the
is
post office.
oh gosh,
Yeah.
another struggle of the week. Libby, a good friend of mine is in a similar situation where his work keeps getting downsized, and he keeps getting asked to do more and more work as a result. And if the economy wasn't what it was, he would leave and look for other work, but you can't. So work relationships, yeah. If your crew starts shrinking, Larry, it is harder for you to get the work done.
Yeah.
My
Hiring
goodness.
freeze or in an overtime freeze. Yeah.
Yeah. And Jared also says this is actually something I've heard a lot of. A lot of folks in IT have a history of working remotely. And Jared says, I can tell you that working from home is a mixed blessing. On the days that I'm lazy, I can work from home. However, when things break in the middle of the night, I can work from home, which might make it harder to get some of the stuff done. I'm
madly trying to catch up with chat, guys. I'm also looking to see if we have any new faces this week, or if we're just becoming hopelessly incestuous.
So, Linda says, our boss tried to beat us down this week, but our small team rallied to fight back. So,
Linda, no spoilers. Oh, wait, you're talking in real life. Okay.
This is also one of those challenges, Larry. Trust is so important when you're working remotely, and knowing where your team's at. You don't have the quick check-ins you do when you're in person, and you're able to just see how people are doing. So it can be very easy for teams to be in different places. Scott says, Riker and Troy have a very we are flirting this season or aren't we kind of working relationship. That's also something we should dive into. Oh, Zahir, why did you have to bring it up? Geordi and Dr. Brahms work crush leading to possible hostile work environment. Yeah, that was pretty awkward. That was not the best working relationship. So, Larry, let's dive into some of the examples we want to explore here. Should we go back?
After I started getting into it, I did this in a little bit of a vacuum, so I hope it didn't throw you a curve. But there are so many once you get into it. I was trying to be representative and think of all the shows.
It's kind of the entire series. The entire series is kind of, or the entire franchise is kind of about this. It's about people working together.
And you know what? Really, I always worry about trying to represent all the series. And boy, I didn't have to worry too much about including Discovery.
Yeah.
This week, talk about work relationship. Now it's evolving, but if you're looking at just as the pilot of DS9 had all these friction points, boy, Discovery. I sent you a couple.
Yes.
Starting off with dumping an inmate in the middle of your crew and expecting things to turn out well.
Yeah. So that Michael Burnham had a very hard onboarding process. I think it's safe to say that. And this is something I think a lot of
writers of Discovery.
Yeah, that's true. This is also something that's true very now. Yeah, it's true right now. My wife, her team has had some new hires in the last few months, and these are now people that are working having never met anyone else in person. And my wife's been working with the team since October of last year. She had months before the pandemic occurred. However, these new folks, they've never had time on site at all. Their interviews were done online. They're onboarded online. And I think that process of joining a team now, it's kind of like what Michael Burnham experienced, where it's very hard to read this crew, know what roles everyone has. Like when she first sees the black badge, where I was like, oh, come on, this can't just be Section 31. No, it kind of was. But she doesn't know what her role is. She doesn't know why she's there, what she's supposed to do. She doesn't know who are the people that are responsible for what. And that experience, I think, really matches what a lot of people are going through right now when they're trying to join a team, having never met anyone in person at all.
Well, how many people did her tardigrade kill?
I love the tardigrades. I love the short trek with the tardigrade. Mm-hmm. That is one of, which is now, folks, if you haven't seen short treks, I think Jared might have mentioned this on the Facebook group this week. But the short treks, the recent ones, are now available for free on YouTube. Someone can maybe share a link to that in the comments below. They're wonderful. There's a short trek with Star Trek Discovery. There's an animated one. There's kind of a stop motion. There's two animated ones and and like a stop motion one as well. There's one that's a prelude to Star Trek Picard. So go check those out. They're a lot of fun. Yeah. Larry, we've got some original series examples as well. Which one? Yeah.
Well,
you sent me that.
This topic of work relationships, since we spent so much time developing this theme this week.
Yes, we did.
It was kind of. I was sitting there thinking, let's see if we ever had a reverse insurrection moment where I was just going to restream a solo camera to everybody. Something happened to you, or you know what? You mentioned your power. If your power went out, and I was going to do the show myself with my PhD to draw on. What would I get to? And no, it's another case of all the examples popping up. But one thing I tried to do was think of, when we think of work relationships, it's like we always go to the negative ones, right?
Sure.
It's like, well, that's the good stories, so the drama. And I thought, well, you know what? Sometimes there's a positivity also, and some of the ones from Lower Decks veered back into positive outcomes, even though they had a weird road to get there.
I think that's a beauty of Lower Decks. It almost always gets there. We're only 3 episodes in, but it always feels like it gets there.
Like it's a sitcom that's 22 minutes long.
Yeah,
very quick. But the weird road that can happen is, we were talking about Bashir and Dax. There have been, when is a workplace crush, romance, affair disastrous, and when does it lead down this very healthy path that eventually, depending on the rules of the situation, whether that's not good or whether it's allowed, it's almost like you can have an off the clock relationship as long as it doesn't blow up. It's like, if we can jump ahead, if we can be the prophets, if you can bring your orb of time and jump ahead and see that everything's going to be hunky dory and you're going to be married 50 years or whatever the relationship is, then it's okay. But if this is going to blow up in a year, don't start it. Because we've got the Toms and Balanas that wind up together. We've got the O'Briens that wind up together. They were crewmates, remember? Keiko was the ship's botanist, and there for the Arboretum. She wasn't in Starfleet though. She was a private consultant in Starfleet. But then you've got the ones that do blow up, and tragically, if not relationship wise. And I go back to the weddings. Usually they don't show a wedding unless it's going to be happy, but then you start off with the very first wedding, right, which ended tragically, which is then poor, Angela is looking for a guy off and on whenever they could write her into a script the rest of the show. But there's also one of the most uncomfortable, talk about the HR moments. I always think of the transporter pad when Kirk and Dr. Noel are beaming down, and they have that oh wait, we met at the Christmas party. Oh yeah, that's so. Yes, kids that have never watched the original series, that was a moment. There's plenty more, but yes.
Well, I think it brings up a few things here. One is the very real world. The very real world application of this, which is at what point do you move forward with a workplace romantic relationship, and when is it not okay? And then also for folks who are working remotely. So it's not just about the military and NASA and space exploration, but sometimes you might be working in a small town. And there might be one very large employer, and pretty much everyone works for that employer. You can't really minimize the chances, or you can't eliminate the chances of a workplace romance, because it might be the only option. And this also often happens in academia as well. So much of your time in grad school or out of grad school might be spent with your colleagues, and that might be the only place in which a romance can occur. I think the issue comes down to power. Do you have power over the other person? Or like a lot of the Star Trek relationships we see, they aren't necessarily in the same command line, although sometimes they are.
Hmm.
you know, Worf and Jadzia, like, was one person their superior? Did they have power over each other, or were they kind of in lateral, parallel positions? I don't know, Larry. Troy and Riker, you know, he is the first officer, but she also has a lot of different authority. Like, I don't know, it's weird. In normal
If they're
workplaces,
near equals, it's okay. It's not. The more power differentiation or status differentiation, the not okay, which I
yeah.
can see. That's well. Now you're almost into a. This is not work, but now you're getting into like the teacher student type dynamic.
I was just
Or
about to
the,
say that. I was just
or the
about to say
boss,
that.
or the boss. I keep saying underling. Is there a negative connotation to underling? The
Uh,
boss employee. The more because if things go sour in both those relationships, if things go sour, then there's awkwardness would be nice if that's as far as it went. But
yeah.
there's the the retribution aspect of it going on there.
Yeah, it's I have seen a lot of those uh, teacher-student romances in grad school,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think it's okay. It'll like, um, especially not if you are the faculty student. I mean, there's a big power differential there, and the Me Too movement hasn't quite hit academia the way it's hit other industries, but I see that coming, and I see a bit of a reckoning that's going to happen there. I have heard just too many stories of people I know who've been negatively impacted by a faculty supervisor who is overstepping their bounds and all that sort of stuff. But it's complicated. I think it does come back to that issue of power. Um, we should talk about the next generation here, kind of moving forward. And when it comes to workplace relationships, the one that really sticks out to me, Larry, as like a wonderful collaborative working relationship is Geordi and Data. I'm actually surprised it hasn't come up in the chat already. But when you look at these two individuals, not only do they work very well together, and not only do they both help each other solve their problems and support each other, but they also have this really wonderful friendship that we see evolve over the course of the shows and the movies. The movies do take such a Picard and Data approach
Yeah.
first, but I do think each one does feature some moments, maybe with the exception of Nemesis. Each one has some moments where Geordi and Data, where their relationship continues to evolve, all the way up until
Well,
the very end with Nemesis.
Geordi gets to speak well of him after he dies, but that's about in
Yeah.
Nemesis.
Well,
Um,
he's with him in that last moment before he leaps over to
mhm.
the scimitar. Is that what that ship was?
Yes, good on you.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
not
Hey,
the Narada, not the anything else. The
not the
scimitar.
Narada. No, that would be a parallel
That would be a
timeline.
totally different
Well, the
universe.
Narada exists in the prime timeline too, I guess. Um,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Well,
it
yeah.
came from there. It came from there,
It was.
Larry.
It did. It did. No. That's fine. I mean, like originally they were the flyboys down front, right? First season, they were
Yes.
conceived to
Yes.
be con and ops, and but the duality of that was they were the walking tricorder and the walking computer.
Right.
That's why they were. What are you laughing? Did I just drop a K3 and didn't mean to do it?
I've never heard that before. I've never
Yeah,
heard
that was
that
the
before.
shorthand. That was their little shorthand. Yeah, but
Folks, these are the moments where I feel so privileged to call Dr. Trek a friend because I will now never forget that because I love that so
that's
much. The
important.
walking
That's
computer
all
and
that.
walking tricorder. I'm
Okay,
gonna use that. I'm gonna use that, Larry.
that's probably way better than whatever K3 factor I'm going to have for later on. Okay, apparently.
um, when it comes to Troy and Riker, do you think that relationship was totally okay for them to have? Because it pre-existed their posting, right?
Hmm.
They first became romantically involved they weren't on a they weren't stationed together, right?
Right. She was in grad school, I think. He was
Yes.
stationed on Beta Z. Yes. Yes.
Right. Right. And then it's later that they're both stationed on the Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my guess is Picard or whoever was determining the crew assignments probably didn't know they had a relationship.
Remember this. People forget this. Picard was handed Riker. Picard went through
Hmm.
resumes and things, but Riker was assigned to him, which has always been bizarre to me.
Hmm.
If you go back and read the read the listen to the dialogue when he comes in and he says, I am told that I have been assigned one William Riker," is what he says.
Yeah, you'd think the captain would have would be able to
That.
determine.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, who he wants as his number one. Um, so he's assigned Riker. So someone else is really assigning this crew. There's a good chance they might not have known that there's a pre-existing relationship between Troy and Riker.
Yeah.
And at least season one, they try to be. They acknowledge that they had this pre-existing relationship, but they're not romantically involved now. Um, in fact, we see other relationships that both these characters have over the course of the show, and it's later that their romance is rekindled. And of course, we see that they
Well,
get married.
yeah.
They also have children.
The flux, the polite word for it is creative flux. The realistic word is they don't know what the hell they're doing in the beginning, or they're throwing all kinds of things on the wall to see what stick, and they come up with that Decker Ilea thread of,
Mm.
oh look, we've been together, oh now we're thrown in, and it's almost like they give them that backstory, not so much to act on it, but to give texture to as the two of them go off on other relationships, to play with it as background. Not that they're ever going to circle back to each other again, which is what
Yes.
happens in Haven, and Riker's all moony faced about her with the guy she's not really caring about anyway. Anyway, you see that, and by the time, and the writing staff is going through, the chaos on the bridge years, and by the time they circle back to it though as a touch point of strength. Not that
Mm.
they're ever seriously going to do anything. And about the time it's like they beat it out of the audience. No, stop. It's like Chakotay Janeway. Stop expecting anything to happen with these two. Then they have the loss. Fourth season, she loses her empathy. She gets it back, and the last scene is they kiss. And you're like, well, no, wait, no, what? And it's actually, you can say, well, that's messy, unplanned writing. The writers know what the hell they're doing. But that's also life.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, but
Yeah, I.
it was because the two actors kept it going, between the lines unscriptedly,
Well, they
and
have amazing chemistry.
that they came back to it finally because the show went so long that they made
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, they have amazing chemistry with each other. I think Scott brings up an interesting point here. Once Troy was out of the uniform after encounter at Farpoint, I always got the impression that she was a civilian. If that's true, then Riker and Troy were more on equal footing. I mean, she wasn't a civilian, but her role was a little different.
Demilitarized.
Yeah, it was. So she is a psychologist by training. She has authority in similar ways as a chief medical officer does. She can relieve someone of their post for mental health related reasons. She has that authority. She's on the bridge, so she's sitting there with the
Third
first
chair.
officer. She's got
Yeah.
a third chair, yeah. Which I think just hey, as a psychologist, like how forward that idea is that the role of a ship's counselor is going to be elevated to the same importance as a captain and first officer. That was amazing to me.
Oh,
It
that's
still
so
is amazing.
80s. Come on, that's what. We had one of these weeks we're going to have that theme, but that was as the pendulum was swinging from the height of TNG, foam back
Yeah.
to people looking at it more critically. Oh, it's so a carpet on the walls and a therapist on the bridge. That's so
Right.
80s. I mean, that was that was kind of the pushback on the popularity of TNG. But anyway, it's interesting that you brought that up that way. So
Well, it was a big deal to me, and she's not in the same uniform for a long time, which I hate that, but because she is an officer and she is enlisted, but yeah, her role it's a little confusing, but at least in terms of the power dynamics, you see her on the same level as Riker. She's in the third chair. So
I'm just watching the time. Do you think maybe we should? There's all kinds of examples, and I'm scanning the chat. I'm way behind, guys, on the chat.
we are way behind. Maybe let's do our
These-
rapid fire favorite
These
examples.
weeks when my chat has to be handheld and not right here where I could scroll, yes, I'm just thinking that maybe we should head into the
Let's
next
do-
room.
Let's do some rapid fire ones, Larry. I want to make sure we cover
okay.
cover the franchise.
You.
For Deep Space Nine, there's a ton we can dive into.
Top bottom, yeah.
Yeah, I think the whole entire everyone, any
what I'm
relationship
saying.
there.
And half the recurring groups, yeah.
Yeah. Should we talk about O'Brien again in the context of Lower Decks and relationships here? Work relationships especially. I mean, here's an individual who there are times where his real life relationship with Keiko impacted his work as well. There are times where his relationship with Julian also interfaced with his work. He has a relationship with Rom, too, that also impacts his work. He has a pre-existing relationship with Worf that kind of impacts his work.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to work relationships, O'Brien seems to be... is it Kevin Costner? 7 Degrees of... is it Kevin Costner? Kevin Bacon.
Yes.
I feel like O'Brien... we could probably trace back...
And don't forget the very weird moment when Kira was carrying his baby.
Yes.
The weird massage. That was like a not to spoil it, but there was a Mariner Ransom moment this last week. I was like flashing back to O'Brien and Kira. Anyway, I was like, well, okay, that's weird. Yeah.
What's great about that is they acknowledge how weird it is. They know it's weird. In that episode, they kind of figured that out. But here's my question to you.
Paris amphibians. Yeah.
Here's my question to you, Larry. What do you think it is about O'Brien that really allowed him to maintain these relationships, these work relationships, these professional but also personal relationships with all the people that he had? What's O'Brien's secret here?
Good writing? Oh no. I think it's his. We laugh about Mariner being this way, but I think it's his shirt sleeves attitude. The fact that he'll say it. He's not an officer. He loves being the enlisted guy, even if he's the chief, he might as well be an officer. He's the crusty old chief petty officer on a battleship that's got who outranks, who can yell down any green behind the ears ensign, much less a lieutenant, whatever, the lower officer ranks. But not just that. It's just that he has that can-do, shirt sleeves, roll his eyes and get on with it attitude. I almost did an image of it rather than the Bashir Kira one. The bit where he and Bashir have their first real scene together in the series. I want to say it's Storyteller, but they're in the shuttle together, the runabout together, and Bashir's blathering on and on and on, and he's perpetually in an eye roll the whole trip. Oh no, sir, and he's having to sir him because he's technically an officer and he's technically, and he's just, oh no, sir, it's fine. Oh yes, okay. No, you're not talking too much. And that's the first time you really, for that relationship to go where it went, that's the first time you see them together, really. And but that's a case of where that could have gone south and didn't, because you never know how relationships are going. So yeah, I think it's just that. Shut up, Miles. Just shut up. Do your job. Shut up and get along. And even when he's bumped up to a higher responsibility, he has that. I never thought about it before. It's just O'Brien. O'Brien must suffer.
Yeah.
All the engineers must suffer. B'Elanna must suffer.
Libby says O'Brien is a kind man, very human. He loves to play mentor with Rom, a good father, a good husband who acknowledges his faults, and a great buddy. I think you're onto something
That's why
here.
he's the most famous. Oh no,
I think there's something you're onto something here, Larry. He's a bit more comfortable having hanging out with the crew. It seems like, and that's that kind of sleeves up. I do my job well. He's a great engineer. He's the best transporter chief. The only transporter chief you ever remember. Yeah. But we know he's good at his job. You can trust him with that. But that's, all of Starfleet, everyone's good at their job. And that's actually something I really like about Lower Decks. Is like, they are Lower Decks, but they're good. They're in Starfleet. Everyone's good at their job. What's different about O'Brien seems to be he's willing to take that extra next step and actually spend time and get to know you and hang out, and he's approachable. You can trust him in a way that I think a lot of the more stuffy, the rest of the Starfleet officers aren't quite as much.
You know what? That just made me realize there is no such thing as the O'Brien maneuver.
There's no O'Brien maneuver. There really should be.
No, what I'm saying is, when you said these stuffy officers, Picard, Riker, hey, Kirk, and all of them, that's the thing.
Yeah.
But you never saw O'Brien do that.
Well, you never actually saw him roll up his sleeves. They're always rolled up.
Well, it's because those uniforms, you couldn't roll up sleeves. You had to, have the set
they had to be pre-rolled.
You had to have a pre-roll. Right. You worked at the station or not, you had to have pre-roll. But no, I mean, that just struck me that if anything, the O'Brien maneuver, if it could be engineered on camera, the O'Brien maneuver is rolling up your sleeves, not prettying your shirt,
Yeah. And I think that's what's great about him, and why he's so such a trustworthy character is he's not afraid to get his hands dirty. He's not afraid to bend protocol a little bit in terms of being willing to go hang out at Quark's and say a little bit more about what's on his mind. And sometimes he's also in some ways the most racist Star Trek character when it comes to Cardassians and all of that sort of stuff.
Can I just say something a moment
Please.
here? And maybe I should save this.
I'll refill my coffee, my Rectigino while you. I feel a sandbox. You're about to get on your sandbox, so please.
This is
please
a small one, but I also am very cognizant of our time, everybody. I'm behind on the chat. I'm still trying to find any of our new folks that are joining this week. Maybe we have none. But no, I've noticed these things about as the years go by and things and concept situations, characters are re-examined in light of changing times. And this thing about O'Brien being a racist. Now, I mean, yes, they created the term spoonheads to be a racist term said about Cardassians. But can I just say, it's like Krauts and Nips out of World War II. I'm not apologizing for it, but it's kind of what's expected when you've had a time of war and the other side can have all of its especially physical differences, whether it's language or appearance or both. But a time of war, I'm not apologizing for it. And hopefully after a time of war, as with the Germans, as with the Japanese, as with the Vietnamese even, those things blend back down, but that's heightened. It's hard to win a war if the enemy is your buddy. And that's not very humanistic, but it's kind of the definition of the thing. It's like if you're not going to find yourself in that kind of a mental trap against your enemy, then why are you fighting in the first place? And maybe you shouldn't be fighting. I'm not glorifying war. I'm just saying you can't, if you're going to go down this path, sadly, that's kind of expected. And all I'm saying is to come back 20 and 30 and 40 years later and to take it out of context and go, oh, you're a bad guy because you're a racist because you call him a spoonhead. It's like he was learning, and the thing is, I'm
Yeah.
talking about World War II. That's 2-3 generations ago. Well, a generation. My dad's passed now, but for a lot of younger people, that's like 2 and 3 generations, and you lose track of that.
Yeah.
But we're watching O'Brien mere years after Setlik 3. So
Yes.
this is like a Vietnam vet talking about the Vietnamese in the late 70s still. And some of the, there were a lot of political, sometimes things just have to settle down. Something that, what was it? Carter wanted to recognize Vietnam, and it wasn't until Clinton. Sometimes the water just has to pass under the bridge when you've had that. But all the talk about looking at O'Brien and saying, oh, he's racist, they were enemies in a hot shooting war where he could have been killed, where he had friends killed. And the fact that we do see him grow is what ought to be focused on.
I think that's what Libby mentions here.
Otherwise, otherwise he's inhuman. Otherwise he's something that's not real.
Libby says O'Brien admits his racism and tries to overcome it, and I think that's a key.
He's part of the growth of. He's not the only one. There are thousands and thousands of other O'Briens.
Well, and yeah, I think that's what makes, again, O'Brien a character that I love so much is we see his growth is he's constantly growing. When we first see him, he's an unnamed officer on that battle bridge, right? He's at the con, I think, for the battle bridge.
His name is Battle Con, C-O-N-A.
Which was foreshadowing all the suffering he was going to have in his career.
And you know what? Bob Justman liked him. I feel like I'm doing a little K3's. Bob Justman liked him and had him. He's actually running around with the hoop, with the net, trying to catch the Antikins in the sea lay, which was the crazy B plot, a couple episodes later. And then he's like off on a movie career, and they liked him. But you don't see him for like another year, and they want him to be a transporter chief. So now he was in Command Red for that, so he could be up front. And now when you see him, they want him to be a transporter chief because he can come in and do a scene, and leave. But he has to be in gold for that. So now he's in gold, and it's turnover, and no one knows that whole thing about his rank. He's not wearing anything in the first 2 episodes you see him in Red. So he's like he's an ensign or a crewman. We didn't know. And then you see him with 1 pip, and Riker calls him lieutenant first because that's all he is. They haven't given him a name. And then later on, they give him O'Brien.
Yeah.
And I don't think he gets Miles until he and Keiko. I could be wrong. Somebody will correct me. I'm totally off the top of the head here. He may not be Miles until Keiko calls him Miles when they get married. Or if not, but it's much later. He's O'Brien for a couple of years before anyone knows what his first name is.
Yeah, I think we have so much love for O'Brien, and I appreciate the context you're giving here, Larry. Robert says O'Brien rose from the ranks so it's easier for him to relate to others, a real NCO, non-commissioned officer. Libby also says that there's a lot of examples in Star Trek of when it's okay to be racist. Like, for example, calling the Ferengi little trolls. The Ferengi Cardassians, Klingons. Star Trek shows us we can overcome our prejudice and work towards overcoming it. It's like the song in the musical Avenue Q, everyone's a little bit racist.
What?
I don't know that song. I know the musical. I don't know that song, so we're lucky you all avoid that song from me. But Michael always says, Sisko's prejudice against Nog, and how he evolved there. That's a great example. Zahir, pulling out this quotation, "It's not you I hate, Cardassian. It's what I've become because of you." We really see his evolution there, and as Scott's relating it back to McCoy. They're both meant to be these contemporary human characters who are flawed and relatable, and also grow. And I didn't mean to say that he's a racist. I meant to say we see prejudice with O'Brien, even though he's a character who probably shows the most prejudice in the series. he's also relatable, and he grows and he evolves here. And I think that's something that's just so fantastic about this character in a way we don't see
Did
with the
they
other
teach
characters.
you about Ferengis at the academy?
See exactly, yeah. There's a lot of this, and Deep Space Nine does a good job in general of showing us these the prejudice. We see that with the Dominion and the shapeshifters.
That was a scene, right? That's the pilot scene from Caretaker. Kim and Tom, Harry, Kim, and Tom Paris. And I would have loved it. Looking back now, what we needed to have was Harry Kim to go, "Oh, did you hear we got one finally?"
Oh gosh. Speaking of Voyager,
And then Quark says, "That's my nephew." Yeah, that's
speaking of
your nephew.
Voyager, I want to talk about Seven and Janeway a little bit, Larry. I know we're a little we're going long here, but we haven't talked about that relationship yet in all of life support, lives history, our 19 episode
This is
history.
number 19, everybody. Yes.
19 weeks. We're coming up on 20. That's a lot of weeks. This whole series
That's
that
100 weeks.
yeah. This all started with one canceled panel at WonderCon, and here we are almost 20 weeks later. It's pretty amazing.
Blame WonderCon. Blame WonderCon. No, blame Corona, I guess. Yeah.
Blame Corona. I want to talk about Seven and Janeway because I haven't thought about them as a working relationship until actually someone mentioned in the comment section today.
I wouldn't think of it as a work relationship either, but I think of it just like bring her back from the dead. It's like a therapeutic pullback that Janeway refuses to let go of until the patient sees that it's worth not pulling the tubes out of her arm, kind of, literally in the beginning, but she finally embraces what's happening as not a betrayal of her true nature, which I always think is funny because the Borg aren't a true nature. The whole exploration in Picard about the Borg, it's like, the Borg are all really other things that got hijacked.
Yes,
so that's just a group. It's like a group collection of victims, which was really kind of interesting. Whether it was like people who were, like not veterans of a war, like civilian veterans of a war, or people who were all at a mass shooting together, who all had different lives, but suddenly one event makes them all with a common thread that they never would have had before. And usually that's it's not like, hey, here's our collection of people that won the lottery. Usually it's something bad that brings all disparate people together, and suddenly they have something in common. And that's the way I always think about the Borg. Anyway.
I love the XP storyline and thinking about the Borgs as victims and as people who are recovering from a massive trauma. I love that storyline. But getting back to Seven and Janeway here, yeah, there's that element of Janeway helping her to become human again, to be human again. Yes, there is that element. However,
is that a song?
We also. No, I think that was Beauty and the Beast that I just quoted, the animated movie. Gaston, I think, talks about wanting to be human again. That might have been in the special edition. That might have been an unreleased song. I don't know. Anyways.
Well, if you're going to sing it, it's going to be the very special edition, but you should move on.
Well, getting back to Seven and Janeway here. Yes, she's trying to help Seven to regain her humanity. But what we also see is a character who joins the crew, doesn't understand protocol, doesn't understand who to report to, doesn't understand how to work well with others, and Janeway, who's this manager who really helps her acclimate to the working culture of the ship and gets her to a point where at first she's like, Seven's like, this is so inefficient, I can just do this myself. And Janeway's like, that is not how we do this on the ship. We see the evolution of Seven really coming to value why Voyager works in the way it does, and really valuing the diversity of thought. What I love about that is it speaks to it really captures a lot of the research on working teams. I think I've mentioned this before on life support, but many years ago, Google did one of the biggest studies of what makes for successful working teams. Mm-hmm. And what they found is the best working teams are ones where people in the team have made it feel safe to share divergent ideas, have made it feel safe to say things that that might conflict with what the majority is saying. And I think that's what Voyager does very well. That's what every Starship crew does very well. That's every briefing room. The captain is asking for thoughts. Why might this not work? Other options. Let's explore everything. It's not just my way or the highway. And Janeway and Seven's relationship is one that it's about that. It's about understanding how to work in this larger team. So I never really thought about that until now. But I think it's a great example of someone developing a great working relationship.
Yes. I'm sorry. I was catching up on chat. I'm just wondering if we should mosey over to the
there's
to the
there's Enterprise
in and out.
There's Enterprise. There's we talked about Discovery. There's Star Trek Picard. There's Lower Decks. Yeah, why don't we do that? Let's. I kind of gave a little bit of a counselor's log there, but let's.
You know what? I just realized we haven't said a word about Enterprise. Enterprise had Trip and T'Pol's emerging relationship, but also the friction points of Major Hayes and Reed when the Mako came aboard, and they, you get into fisticuffs there. And I even sent you a picture there from another Discovery when Ash Tyler circles back around to the crew, and the guy he killed is back alive, and they get into a fight. Talk about workplace relationships. Yeah,
that was awkward.
You better not kill me again. Okay, I promise.
There's a lot there. There's so many examples we could dive into. But Counselor's Log, this is where I do a little bit of a deeper dive into the psychology behind some of the things we're talking about. And I gave a little bit of I spoke about that Google study, which is one of my favorites. But there's a lot more we can talk about workplace relationships and why they're so important. Larry, one of the things that your coworkers can do, they see you day to day. And they also pick up on changes that are happening to you day to day. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the challenges I think a lot of people are having right now, is we don't have that regular contact with other people. We're not seeing them. We don't have as good of a read on how they're doing.
One of the moments.
Yeah, we don't have that. Yeah, exactly. And so we're just kind of stuck at home, or some of us don't have work, or we might be freelancers or entrepreneurs, and we used to have our meetings with other freelancers, or we might work in the coffee shop. We had other contact regularly with people that we don't have anymore. And one of the things that's really lost there is that regular check-in. It's the times where your coworkers are able to say, hey, are you doing okay? Like, you look pretty tired, or you look kind of exhausted. Like, what's going on? Is there anything I can do to help? Those water cooler moments aren't happening, and that's
or the after work water coolers. Hey, let's go get a drink.
Yes, exactly. We're like
Kelly's,
so much of the support, the social support of hey, let's go to happy hour, let's hang out, let's grab dinner. Those are moments that also strengthen a team. When you spend time with someone else outside of the normal context that you see that person, you're strengthening the relationship. That's how we turn acquaintances into friends. That's how we strengthen the relationship with someone you work with. It gives you an opportunity to not only get closer, but also solve some of the problems that you might be experiencing at work. So we're not having that. we're also not seeing each other regularly. We aren't able to pick up on when someone might be burning out. We might not be able to pick up on, like, is someone working really late? Like, do they have too much on their plate? Do we need to help them out?
Burning out or melting down.
Yeah. Or imploding. I don't know. There's so many things, so many ways to be struggling right now. So this is one of the biggest challenges I see, and where I think our story diverges from Star Trek's story about working relationships. We're not having that regular check-in or the opportunities to hang out with each other as much as we normally would. That's what I think one of our biggest challenges, and we're going to talk about that when we get to the away mission, what to do about it. But before we transition to K3, folks, I would love to hear, what are you doing with the people you work with? What's helping you to stay connected with them? What's helping you to have a trusted team? How are you bonding with your team? How are you aligning with a shared mission and goal? What are the things that you're doing with the people you work with? Let us know in the comments below, and I'm going to put up some of those best comments in a moment. But while we do that, Larry, it's that time. It's time to turn up our K3 factor here.
Yes. And so I think, I don't know if we have any new folks this week, but yes, time to dip into the K3 here, which is my chance to do a deep dive from Star Trek background through the lens of what we're talking about this week. I've also dabbled a little early here and thrown out a couple of them. We're going to go imageless this week, but I'm going to go back to the original days of Star Trek talking about work relationships. And I don't mean McCoy and Spock. I'm talking about the guy who the pendulum has swung from being the underappreciated, uncredited guy who actually gave us a lot of Star Trek concepts through today. Apart from the gurufication of Gene Roddenberry in the 70s and the 80s, but the guy who was like the showrunner under Gene from the middle of the first season, the middle of the second season, which I consider to be like the blossoming of Star Trek, a guy named Gene L. Kuhn. And Gene Kuhn missed out on reaping a lot of the reward for inventing the Klingons, inventing the term Starfleet, inventing the term Federation of Planets, United Federation of Planets, inventing the Prime Directive as a stated thing. All these concepts were in scripts that he did, whether it was Devil in the Dark or the Omega Glory. No, Errand of Mercy. He either took freelancer scripts and made them work, or he had his original scripts, and he was a machine. I got to ask his assistant how it was that he was just cranking scripts out, and she said, "Oh, speed." Before
Stephen King writes about that. Stephen King writes about that. Yeah.
It was just a tool. It wasn't like a drug you abused. It was a tool. But anyway.
Not that we're not excusing drug use.
No.
As a means of productivity.
I'm talking purely historical here, like, calling people spoonheads. I'm not excusing anything. But Gene Kuhn has gone from being the forgotten guy, who also died in 1973, way ahead of the explosion of Star Trek love and attention and study. He had chain smoked for 20 years and then had a huge, massive, and died just like that. But we've gone from no one knowing him, or that was a name in the credits, appreciating him. That pendulum has swung back to now there's a lot of attention, like, well, why did he leave? And at first there was a lot of this, well, it was exhaustion. They were all exhausted. It was his health he left in 1967, this midway through second season. His cancer didn't get bad. He wasn't like not breathing until 73, like right before he died. And he went on and had careers with other shows after that. Then came Bronson and the show about the cat burglar. I've just gone Monday. I forgot. Anyway, he had a great career. Worked a lot of places. Did a couple movies. Did a book. This is getting back to work relationships. What's only come out in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years was the guy that saved Gene's butt, as far as being a steady, script, because Gene was notorious about Bob Justman talks about standing on his desk to get him to finish a script that they're waiting to shoot, right? Or he's
Oh my
rewriting.
gosh.
It's not so much about Gene doing his own scripts as this coherent view of this amazing show that no one's ever seen before, because it's all coming out of Gene's brain, for good or bad.
Yeah.
And the rewrite, famous names, well, fine, but they all need to be rewritten, including Harlan, including, name it. Shore Leave, I'm on location writing scripts. That's why Shore Leave is a little dicey sometimes. Here's Gene Coon that's taken that burden off of Gene Roddenberry, right? And Dorothy Fontana said, well, Star Trek was a success due to its two good genes. What happened? He leaves, like middle of, Trouble with Tribbles is coming down the pike. I mean, all those great second season shows, and Private Little War, and a piece of the action. It turns out, speaking of work relationships, that as productive as it was, it got to the point where Gene Roddenberry disagreed with Gene Coon's use of loosening Star Trek up. The humor that everyone loves to point to, and it wasn't just Tribbles. Tribbles was a humorous show. But even the humorous moments in A Piece of the Action, the humorous moments in other shows that was creeping in, Gene Roddenberry, the great bird of the galaxy, got to the point where he didn't appreciate that. Mm-hmm. And they just came to they came to a loggerheads. I think probably exhaustion was playing into this too. But Gene Coon decided to step back, and people like Bob Justman hated that because he was so amazing and was so reliably cranking these things out and taking other stories and putting the Star Trek shine on them. And he left. But now, did he leave in a huff? No. He went to Universal and had to only work on the show you're working on, which is what still governs a lot of contracts today. But he had a pseudonym, Lee Cronin, and he wrote another 5 or 6, 7 scripts for Star Trek a year. And the third season, whenever you see Lee Cronin, especially like Spectre the Gun and on, that's all really still Gene Coon. The point being here that did he and Gene come to heads and now they hate each other and they won't ever... No, Gene and he kept a relationship going because he knew he was a great writer. He just didn't want... And we can argue whether that was, Gene wanted his square-jawed, here's the lieutenant in space, his Marine show, the square-jawed Kirk. Is that what he wanted for the tone? Would Star Trek be as appealing now if we didn't have... Oh, my God, Gene Coon's the one that brought out the Spock-McCoy duality and really, rode that.
My friend, you've brought it full circle back to work relationships.
The cast loved Gene Coon because he was, doing that. And it's sad that he was not around to start basking in the Star Trek glow. And, he didn't get to DC Fontana and David Gerrold all these years later because he was gone so soon.
Yeah.
But anyway, speaking of work relationships, there's a case where the golden child of the team, eventually something goes haywire. That happened in second season Next Generation too. Tracy Torme was a little bit the same way. Created Dixon Hill, was a golden child, and then he and Maury Hurley, banged heads. Yeah. And he still submitted a story or two. But Gene Coon's case is amazing when you look back now. Now that we know what happened there, the fact that they had a great relationship and it survived, the mutual. He wasn't fired, he left, but they came to a loggerheads, and he said, "You know what? Why don't you get someone else to do this, and I'll go rest for a while." And but it didn't end the relationship, is my point. And Gene Coon, we have lots more. Was he in the driver's seat versus writing freelance? No, but he's still contributing, and
it's so bizarre to think about right now that he was able to continue writing for Star Trek under a pseudonym. Those exclusivity clauses in contracts are, as you said, Larry, it's still the way things work now. I've signed those myself, and there's no way you could get away with that nowadays.
Yeah, the pseudonym was not about his relationship with Gene. The pseudonym was totally about
for the contract with Universal. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, there's no way you could pull that off now. That's amazing. That's a good one, Larry. I love how it tied back to the theme of work relationships, and also a story I didn't know. So away mission today's away mission is going to be about how to improve some of these work relationships we all have, and I want to dive into the comments here because we've got the full gamut of experiences here with work relationships. Zahir says, my manager has regular meetings on Microsoft Teams. He also sends us care packages with Girl Scout cookies. Great guy. I love that he has dedicated time to make sure that they're addressing relationships and then doing something tangible that feels good, that brings joy to life. Some of the best days at work are when the company feeds you, when they bring in some treats, and that's also something that isn't happening as much now. So making that happening that remotely. On the other hand, Libby says, bonding, I just email things to be printed and snail mail several times a day, plus answer questions about things that must be done in the office instead of from home. At least it's teamwork. So Libby, it sounds like you're dealing with a situation where it doesn't really feel like there's much of a relationship at all beyond the tangible work that you have to do, which is very hard if you feel like you don't have that. Tim says, I'm still currently being furloughed from where I work. Not had any green light or going back to work yet. And I think a lot of people are in Tim's shoes where they you aren't able to work. And so, Tim, I wonder about what have your relationships, what's occurred to the relationships you had with your coworkers? Are you still in touch? Has that changed? And what is that like for you now? Cairo says, don't have any conflict with coworkers outside of video and text chats anymore, and that's really straining at times, especially when coworkers may not react to questions on chat for a day or more, and you need them to answer for making progress at work. Cairo, have you been talking to my wife? Because that's one of her biggest challenges right now. So much of her work happened by seeing the person and going, oh, hey, I'm wondering, where are things with that? Oh, okay, here they are. Okay, done. Boom. Like 1,000 emails have been saved just from that one in-person interaction. But now, sending messages on Slack or on whatever platform you have, emails, not getting a response back, and like wondering, did the person receive the message? Did they not? Are they mad at me? Are they overwhelmed? Are they stressed? You don't have that in-person contact. Cairo, my wife, is really struggling with that too. Linda says, my team is fighting back against the suits, trying to cut our essential services in a pandemic. We will not compromise our ethics for the bottom line. They'll lose us all. No union, so we can't strike. Linda, that is a tough situation. Larry, you're about to say something.
If I'm not mistaken, Linda's in healthcare. Linda's a nurse, I think.
I don't know.
But anyway, that's yes.
Yeah, I think, I had a big, I vented massively with my wife last night about what colleges are doing right now. Reopening and in often cases blaming students for COVID outbreaks when, the colleges haven't really done the things they need to do, and also the irresponsibility I see that a lot of colleges are engaging in, bringing students from around the country with different hotspots and different beliefs about safety in the time of the pandemic and putting them together. I think it's a really irresponsible thing, and I think a lot of I can also understand why colleges are doing that, because they're financially struggling as well. And I think about all these organizations that we all work for. No one's really doing well. I guess with the exception of Zoom, I don't think anyone is doing well. So we're all kind of struggling and financially struggling, and that's impacting all of us. Microsoft Teams, yeah, they're probably struggling. Libby says...
Somehow, I don't think... Did that Google study on Teams happen to say anything about MS Teams? Gosh, with the same word, you would think it would be... no, I'm totally kidding.
Libby says, and my boss occasionally calls, but I've had to ask him to call first, and I'm answering my desk phone via cell phone, and it rings constantly. Boss, occasional emails, and update on office things. Yeah, so I mean that's the other thing is like scheduling time, FaceTime, and check-ins are sometimes helpful. Sometimes when you've had a whole day of face meetings, it's just exhausting. Um, so it's a struggle there. Let's see. I'm trying to capture everyone's comment here.
Robert McLean, back we were talking about O'Brien. Robert McLean said O'Brien is a brown shoe, not a black shoe.
I don't think I've heard those terms before.
I haven't either, but I totally get it.
What's the distinction here between
Well,
a
a
brown
black
shoe?
shoe is like formal, like
Okay,
tuxedo.
yes.
Brown is like
Oh, I get it.
brown shoe
Yeah.
is a shirt sleeve version of a
Yeah, totally. As someone who um, often just wears brown shoes and not black shoes, I love it. I totally get that. Jessica says, Jessica, is this your first time here? If it is,
Might be.
welcome. Jessica says, I'm not employed, but I'm currently trying to find creative ways to network for a project, YouTube channel I want to start. Awesome. That's a situation I think a lot of people are also in, where especially people who are right out of college or in their 20s is trying to find work in this economy is incredibly difficult. And one thing I would stress is like getting back to the idea of work relationships. Who do you know in different industries? Who can you talk to who might be able to give you good feedback or give you good direction about what to try? If you're launching a YouTube channel, who can you talk to? Maybe someone who's on this show about making a YouTube channel. Who do you know? And so you're not completely starting from scratch. Jared says, best boss I've ever had, sent me new monitors that I still use to this day. Larry, sometimes it's just about...
Can I have your boss, Jared? Wow, that's...
Yeah. Sometimes it's just about solving some of those stressors, like getting your employees a standing desk so they don't have all this back pain, or a better chair, or better ergonomics, things that just kind of reduce some of the stressors that they have. That's really sometimes wonderful. Larry, Linda's following up. I'm a nurse clinician, so specialized services. So you definitely you are on the right direction there. Robert says, I may be retired, but my wife's support team. But I am my wife's support team as she works in retail. The customers have become meaner. Yeah, everyone's struggling so much, and some managers seem clueless at times. But the floor workers get through it day to day. Wear a mask and remember to be kinder when shopping. Please be kind to our essential workers who are putting their lives on the line so that we can continue to live our lives. There's a lot of stress right now, Larry. And I've seen it happen when I go into stores to get things that we need. We all need to really dig into compassion and patience right now, I think, more than anything else.
That just got me thinking. I think if I'm out of this house, it's to be 90% of the time it's to be in our grocery stores. Mm-hmm. And I tend to think there's times when I almost think people there are very social, and people are like actually talk to each other instead of just being on their way. People get out of each other, and part of it's the social distancing thing, and everybody feels a little more sensitive about distances, but not to be hyper about it. And people say, "Oh, excuse me, pardon me," even when they're passing, or there's a crowd scene, and it's like a car wreck of something going on in the aisle, and people have to get around and they navigate, or they're in. I feel like people are actually more verbally polite that way than. But then again, on the other hand, I think once you get back into the big box stores like a Walmart, or sometimes people are, manic and they're not doing that. But the biggest thing of that the longer this goes on, I hope does not fade. Here's mini soapbox. I think in the first flush of things in March and April and May, and they start talking about essential services and essential workers, and people start off like thinking obviously about the medical doctors and nurses and medical hospital janitors. I mean, it was starting to get, people putting their lives on the line for the rest of us. And then somebody went, well, duh, what about the truckers and the delivery people? And then that kept going all the way, playing out into, well, the food delivery kids, people, whatever, tip them. They're trying to, and the grocery workers and the grocery stockers. And then it evolved into the farmers, oh, yes, even many of them who don't speak, the people keeping Central Valley of California going to feed the rest of the country and wherever. Yeah. And there was a realization that we've gone from thinking the doctors with their 3 degrees as essential workers down to all these minimum wage and sub-minimum wage workers who are keeping the country going. And this whole realization that when we get out of this, many of whom didn't have insurance in our screwed up healthcare system. Yes, rest of world, I know. USA. But first scene of the newsroom. Go find it on YouTube. But my point here is, I thought a lot of the world was getting, not they were opposed to thinking that way, but it was just off their radar. But we were getting sensitized to that. And I thought there was a great groundswell of, when we are through this, we have to do something about all these essential workers who we're treating like we could care less about them. Yeah. And the longer we go with this, I think now we're just into, can we just get through this? And I was hoping some of the reforms that might come out of the pandemic awareness, I hope we don't lose touch with some of the things that need to be done. Depending on what happens here in the States in the next few months, I hope we're in a position next year where we can do some more things about, raising all the boats here, so that so we can recognize people who, oh, look, they really are essential, and not just in a pandemic, but they really are more essential than we've been treating them.
Well, I agree with you, Larry, and I think what we have discovered is the most essential people in our economy, in the United States at least, are also paid the least and have the least amount of protections when it comes to healthcare and that type of support. So we've got a lot of work to do to rebuild our economy, rebuild our country in a way that does support the people who have supported us. We've got a long way to go there. Speaking of supporting people, Libby also says, except for the cell phone, I've had to supply all of my own equipment for working from home. I think a lot of people are in that situation where they don't have the supplies that they need to do the work that they're being asked to do. Jessica says, I'm working on moving past my comfort zones to interact with other YouTubers and learn as much as I can. Jessica, shoot me an email. Ollie@thepsychshow.com, and I'll send you some resources on how to launch a YouTube channel. Let's see. I should get to my away mission here.
Yes.
So,
and just to say, as you enter your away mission here for takeaways, we have Haley. There's a lot of some comment here that I want to get to, but I want to save it for. And a lot of folks have said comments further back, and I want to bring them up. But let's save it for hailing frequencies.
Yeah. Well, we're going to open those hailing frequencies momentarily because I got a very quick away mission. So here's the thing I want to say is, for all of you who are working with Teams, hopefully not through Microsoft Teams, but those of you working on Teams, I'm not, no digs at Microsoft. I think Microsoft has evolved in an interesting way, but Skype is so frustrating to me. And it's the only thing we've got to make this show work.
And it didn't used to be that way.
No, it used to be so easy. Now it takes like 15 minutes to create a new account on Skype.
It's been Microsoftified, yes.
Yeah. So anyways, away mission for this week is, when we worked in person, a lot of the support that we had of our teams happened unintentionally. Seeing people often grabbing lunch together, the water cooler chat, happy hours that would be organized. Those kind of things really helped us to feel connected, to trust one another, to support one another. We don't really have that remotely. So my away mission is so simple. It's to intentionally carve out some time to be with your coworkers outside the context of work. Now, it doesn't mean you have to have a Zoom session, because we're also exhausted by seeing each other on a video perspective so often during the day. It can be a lot of things. It can be a phone call. Hey, how you doing? I just want to catch up. It can also be watching something together. There's a lot of platforms now where you can sync up watching. Netflix Party is an example of it. But there's many others where you can sync up, and then maybe you can just chat with each other. You can just watch a show together or watch a movie together, or maybe with your this is something our team was doing early on in the pandemic, is we were doing fun board game kind of things with each other. There's a lot of board games that you can now play remotely. You kind of text the link to each other and you can play these games together. So if we don't carve out that time, Larry, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. We can't rely on it just like someone organizing a after hour get together and people going to it. It's not going to happen if you don't carve out the time. So who's the one person on your team that you feel a little bit more comfortable with, and what can you do to spend some time together that's different than how you spend time together through work? That's one of the things that's been found to be a psychologically healthy break. It's when you are doing things that are very different than your day-to-day work. So if a lot of your day-to-day work is through Zoom, you don't want to meet on Zoom. If a lot of your day-to-day work is related to numbers, sharing numbers with each other, you want something that gets you very far away from that. So doing something with a coworker that you feel closer to that's very different than the work you do every day, that's my away mission for you all this week.
Yay.
With that, Larry, let's open up those hailing frequencies.
Yeah.
This is a time in the show when we catch up on our comments. We talk about a wide variety of stuff. Larry, I think you've got some comments flagged that you wanted to.
Well, I just wanted to some shout outs, and we've heavily. We actually had some Twitchers. Cairo 47 came over to Twitch, coming in. A lot of folks coming in a little later. That's totally fine, because they'll be the ultimate later when this is archived, obviously. But he'd come in from his outdoor Trek fan club barbecue meeting. So I'm so envious, since you're there in Austria, where hopefully things are a little better than we have them here, but you are probably still socially distanced. And but that's our one Twitcher so far. Nobody stumbling in. But some of our YouTubers have gone unrecognized. I just wanted to do a shout out to Starfleet Boy, and he had a couple of great questions. And also to let you know, Starfleet Boy, when I made my comment about the O'Brien maneuver, and that must be rolling up sleeves, I hadn't seen that you said the exact same thing. So I'm not, but here I am acknowledging that great minds think alike. Okay, just wanted to say that. No, a lot of good folk back. All the different topics we've talked about today.
A couple of quick thank yous. I want to just thank you to Linda, who says, Larry and Ali, thank you for this lifetime, these crazy times. And then purple hearts. Purple's my favorite color, folks, so I appreciate the purple hearts.
Are we sure
also
that easily? Yeah.
Well, I love blue. Most of my clothing is blue. I think blue is my color, but my favorite color to look at is purple. Robert says, the two doctors all day fixing the problems of the world, rejoice, and maybe some coffee. This is what my Saturday mornings have become more enjoyable. So thank you, Robert. I mean, Larry, this is also like our lifeline too. I always love knowing that I have this time in the week where I can just geek out.
Just to have a laugh and sing a song? No, that's Coburnett.
Just to have a laugh, sing a song, drink some coffee. It's that time for life support live. Oh gosh.
We've not had many drinking. You know what? We got into this topic today, and I just realized I was thinking about when I have to make the frame grabs for our. Oh, do you want to do that? That was going to be a thing we were going to do today.
Oh, our favorite comment. Yeah. Let me. Yeah.
our own lifeline has been so thin. I mean, we've had some thin weeks before, but this has been the thinnest of thin weeks. So I'm so glad that we're enjoying each other and you all are enjoying the show and us and each other, because this has been the thinnest of the thin weeks, I'll just say. So yeah. But we had a thing. It's one of those things that just started organically. I started finding some obviously goofy shots of us to post on the board. And if you're not on the board, you should go join the Facebook group, please. But
Yeah,
that's where you find.
we're doing this comment thing. Hopefully my camera will refocus. Oh, come on, camera. It's not wanting to refocus on that. But yeah, we wanted to vote on our favorite caption of the week. Maybe if I hold it here, it'll be there. It's a little bit more focused. But do you want me to just pick one, Larry? Do you want to pick my favorite, or should I pick the most liked?
Doing this off the cuff. Yeah, I could.
Okay.
Look, I'm stuck on it. Well, I guess I could do my phone. As long as I'm on stripped down iMac, I can't go to a third device, really.
I do. There's a lot here. I think my favorite actually comes from Glenn, who I think is not here today. Glenn, if you are, your comment is my favorite because it taps into something that Larry loves. So, I mean, this image is like Larry looking freaked out and me looking like I'm super excited.
You were going into your lower decks.
Oh, that's the vote. Okay, that makes sense. I remember that.
I didn't know you had these spasms, but yes.
Glenn says, Ali is saying, yes, my new, or Larry says, there's a giant Tellarite coming after me. And Ali says, yes, my new hologram projector is working. I love this because I know how much you love Tellarites, Larry. So that was probably my favorite. But there's so many good ones. I'm
looking for the downtrodden underdog. That's all I'm doing. I don't have this pig fetish or anything. I just want everybody to know that. I'm just looking out for those who don't have a voice for themselves. That's all I'm trying to do.
I'll give an honorable mention to Libby's, where she says, Quark, drinks for the house, put them on Larry's tab. I like that one too.
That's good.
Scott's got a great comment here. I had a meeting with my new psychiatrist yesterday and referred to Life Support Live as something that's a big source of fun to help me out right now. Turns out he and his husband are big Trek fans, and it opened up an instant comfort level between the two of us as doctor and patient. I don't know if he's here today, but he was definitely interested. Scott, that's awesome.
That is awesome.
I'm always glad to hear...
I'm speaking selfishly only, but that's awesome.
I love to hear when there are moments of connection between people that wouldn't otherwise have that connection, and when Star Trek's able to do that, I think that's a beautiful thing.
That happens more and more. A lot of us are from the generation when you had to be in the closet, so to speak, with your fandom, right? And you waited to get to a convention before you met. But more and more, if you're wearing, there's been an explosion of subtle geek wear.
Yes.
And, sometimes it screams it in your face. You've got a huge Enterprise or a huge Kirk face on your shirt. But if it's a little, I always love the subtle things.
Me too.
Me too.
That's why I have so many badges.
Well, that's even but I mean, there's if you're wearing the Maquis emblem or something, or if you're wearing, even a Vulcan IDIC symbol is
an
not.
IDIC symbol, yeah.
It's a little out
totally.
There. The more subtle, and then when someone picks up on it,
that's my favorite part. Yeah, totally.
When you're checking out groceries and the checker goes or anything, or you just meet somebody and
or they might just flash a little LLAP at you. Tim, you underestimate me. Dr. Ali wants a purple lightsaber. I have a purple lightsaber. It's in the other room. You think I wouldn't have a purple lightsaber? Of course I have Mace Windu's lightsaber. I do.
You have a purple tricorder with a pink stripe.
No.
Okay, we need to send you a little glowy energy.
Send me a little alien who's gonna like convert their energy into the Ooh, with the purple stripe, yeah. Where's the battery? I love that. Let's see. Larry, you got a comment for us that you want to jump into?
No, I'm busy catching up. Sorry, guys.
Cairo says, "Let's go to Teller Prime in lower decks, please."
Cairo is a Portal 47er, and he knows of my soapbox too. Yeah, Harry Judge, who played all the Tellerites of Discovery the first 2 seasons. I interviewed him. It's on my channel on YouTube. Please, everybody, go like and subscribe my YouTube channel. It's got a late start. If you're not on YouTube, you can go over there now. Anyway, there's a interview up with him, and I said, let's start at hashtag time for Teller Prime. So feel free to spread that around, guys. Knows me too well.
Also, just want to acknowledge Rose says that she's going to be losing some internet connectivity for a few weeks. So Rose, we just want to hope you're going to be okay. We will be here when you come back, and hopefully you'll be able to catch up on the conversation while you're away. We will miss you during those next 2 weeks. Libby says, I'm looking forward to meeting you in real life when this is over. And thanks to Trek, that very well may happen. That's one great thing about in-person conventions. I was very shy in high school, and I went to my first convention and found my people. Larry, I think you're a regular at a few different cons. San Diego Comic-Con is one that you and I do regularly, but you also are a regular at the official con at Star Trek Las Vegas Con.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we have to have a panel. We have to have a get-together. We have to do it in-person, Life Support Live. Jared was talking about us meeting up. Every week the location's changing, Jared. This week you're taking us to DC. Jared, we're not having a get-together in DC in August humidity. No thank you. That is not happening.
Nope. It's bad enough that Shore Leave is in July in Baltimore in DC. But anyway.
Yeah, this is not. Oh, now he's saying Dollywood, Tennessee. Jared, we want to be someplace where it's cool.
Can we just go to like the Denny's in Juneau, Alaska, or something right off?
The Denny's. Well, Riker Country. It is Riker Country.
Interstate 4? Yeah. Yes, Riker Country. Welcome to Alaska. This is Riker Country.
Home of number one. But I think both Libby and Jared have spoken often about having some type of in-person get-together. Let us know in the. I'm very curious in the comments, like when all this is over. Where would folks want that to be? Would it be the official Star Trek convention in Vegas? Would it be San Diego Comic-Con? Would it be Larry? What else are some of your regular stops?
We have to see. We have to see if the Star Trek Vegas convention survives this year between Creation and CBS and the Rio Hotel or whatever's going on in Vegas. We have to see what's happening. I have a very strong suspicion that the paradigm is going to be shifting. But yes, I like this idea. I knew Libby years and years and years ago. We met at either SoonerCon or ThunderCon back in Oklahoma City, where I'm a regular. But there's an East Coast convention that's going to have me as soon as we can get going again. Those are San Diego and Vegas, and SoonerCon are my 3 regular ones every year. A lot of times Salt Lake and Phoenix. But those are all bearing west, and I'm trying to get back east at times. Sometimes I've been at a little wonderful convention in Southeast Louisiana called Sci-Fi-Con. Shout out to them. They've grown and are on the growth curve.
Have you ever done Shore Leave? Have you ever done Shore Leave?
Twice, and it's been... it'd be great to be there. That's in July outside of Baltimore.
As Zahir says,
Author Mafia comes down and has their. That's kind of like become the biggest. If you love your Star Trek authors, the fiction
Yeah.
authors, I should say.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh, because there are other Star Trek authors besides the fiction authors.
Yeah.
Um,
Shore Leave has a lot of those authors.
that's their hangout
Yeah.
every year. And they even do big annual events. They all get
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Zahir says, "Come on, it's not that bad in DC." Zahir, it's pretty bad. It's a
Hey, it's not
swamp.
Florida. I'm waiting for
That's
Jim
true.
to in
That's
here and
true.
say if I will have
You don't have alligators around in DC, so that's nice. Larry, quick question from Jessica. Do you play Star Trek Online? Yeah, I have no idea. Do you?
I never have because I'm not a gamer anyway. I was an arcade gamer, and then I never liked home games because I hated joysticks. I know we're way beyond that, but I just never did. The kids all do, but Star Trek is a different thing, and in Star Trek world, the games came and went when they were computer based, and all that, and they people get excited. Some of them were bad and not good, not playable. Online is incredible, is wonderful. I've meant to at times, and then for a few years, I was talking to him about being part of some kind of um, like Virgin game event or something, where it's like,
Mm.
hey, here's Larry learning, and tie in and do that. And that was an idea for a while, and it just didn't happen. And now the game has gone on so long that I don't know about. I know it's obviously meant for people to jump in at any point and play, but I just never have. And then Adventures has come along. I see it's a paper and dice, excuse me, tabletop. I called D&D paper and dice game for years because there was no term. But Star Trek Adventures has come along as the latest incarnation, and people who never, tabletop gamed before, did role play gaming before, are excited about Adventures, Star Trek Adventures, which is a licensed paper and dice game, role play game for Star Trek. So no, answer the question, I'm not. I've been next door. I totally love the fact that they've got in-house continuity that goes out of their way, and I totally appreciate the fact that they got blown up by Picard, which I totally
Mm.
was expecting to happen, despite all the closeness. They're trying to interlink all the, licensed affiliated comics and novels and all that, but there comes a point where you just can't. So no, Linda, I haven't.
A lot of folks are saying that San Diego Comic-Con has become too expensive and too hard to get into, which I definitely acknowledge and understand. Tim and a few other folks are saying, what about those of us in Europe? How about a destination Star Trek event in Europe? I mean, speaking of expensive, that's a little bit harder for us American folks to get there, but we would definitely love that. The European Star Trek fans.
Get a sponsor. We need to get a sponsor, Ollie.
Oh my gosh, yeah, we definitely need a sponsor.
You have to be businesslike about this and have a sponsor.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Larry. That is a good idea. Cairo says, you just reminded me I need to log into Star Trek Online to hang out on Ryza a bit more. That sounds great right now.
Little Jamal Harone by Zoom by remote.
Oh man, Robert says perhaps Dr. Ali can help Larry with his fear of joysticks and home gaming systems. Yeah, Larry, I would love to. Gosh, what I would love to play with you is Star Trek Bridge. Is it Bridge Commander or the VR?
I don't have a fear of joysticks. I have a disdain because in the old joystick, a handheld joystick could never keep up with an arcade joystick, which couldn't keep up either. Any game sat there for a week and it was broken, where you could never have the sensitivity of it. Much less. I never understood how you were supposed to. I want that sucker nailed down so I have leverage. I never understood that, but it's not about.
Well, Larry, did you ever play the VR game?
The VR game of what?
The Star Trek VR game, the Bridge.
No,
something.
I did. There was a generic game that was basically doing Star Trek, and then they sold a license and developed it. They go around and set up at conventions, and I finally got pulled in and played one of those once, just recently in the last year. I think it was the Albany Northeast TrekCon where I did.
Well, there's a game released, I think it's on PlayStation and also PC, where you're basically a bridge crew.
Right.
And there's no joystick. You're like using the controls and you have to work together.
Right. No,
it's a ton of fun.
I'm talking about the evolution. What did I just see here? No. Scott says, how about doing it in Southern California and tack on a giant Trekland trek? Just make it he's basically doing a Jared here. So we should just not be part of a bigger event, just have our own event.
I've always
I retreat weekend, and yeah.
I think I mentioned this a week before, but Vasquez Rocks. My friends and I who play Star Trek Adventures, we were gonna have a trip out to Southern California and go to Vasquez Rocks back in June. And obviously that didn't happen. So I always wanted to make my trip out there. Jared is moving the site again. Live support, live retreat. Mendenhall Glacier, Juneau.
I've been there.
Really?
On the inland cruise, yes. 10 years ago this summer, I was blogging about my trip to Barrow, Alaska, where Will Rogers, my hero, died, and about all the threads I've seen between Will Rogers and Star Trek, especially through McCoy's eyes, but in general. But that trip was like a lifetime to me.
Robert says,
by the way, Libby, I have also been to Crater of Diamond State Park in Arkansas. Just so you know.
Robert says, I actually managed an arcade in the Bay Area called Star Trek's back in the day. Robert, I think I went to that arcade and I liked it because it sounded like Star Trek. So maybe you and I have crossed paths in the previous timeline there. I remember that arcade as a kid who grew up in the Bay Area. So, this is all timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly. Okay, Larry, I think I need to start playing the music. I know folks get very sad when I do this, but okay, between now and next week, here's what I'm going to do. Tim said I can start to picture Dr. Ali with his purple lightsaber. I have a picture of myself with my purple lightsaber. I will share that on the group.
Of course you do.
Of course I do. Larry, where can people find more of you this week?
Well, if you enjoyed our little mini K3s and just in general, and if you're new to the group here, everything is at LarryNemecek.com. Everything of Trekland is there. And you know what? If you're on YouTube watching this, that's Larry Nemecek. That's my Twitter, simple Larry Nemecek. And if you're with us on Facebook right now, that's my Facebook page, Larry Nemecek's Trekland. And I didn't make it fancy or anything, but there is occasionally a weekend special to dive into Portal 47 with the deep divers. A lot of them are here with us today. It's a simple 3 for 2. So just go to LarryNemecek.com. There's a big button at the top. It's a pandemic time short taste of Portal 47 to see if you're ready for it, where we deep dive every month. It's like a mini con all year long. And like I said, we were virtualizing 5 years ago. We were revolutionizing fandom way back then. So we're old hands at this, and some of them on here can tell you that too. But anyway, if anyone want to join us, come over. But all things, the Trek Files is on Tuesday from Roddenberry, and Tuesday's live right here on this Facebook and YouTube at 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern. Anybody wants to join us there?
Yeah, you can stay in touch with us with facebook.com/group/lifesupportlive. Last week I told you all about the trailer for my new show with PBS called Self-Evident. The first episode dropped on Monday. So if you like the trailer, go to PBS Voices on YouTube. You can find episode 1 of Self-Evident. It's all about what's it like to be 10 years old right now. I really love the episode. Let's see. There's always ways to keep in touch with us on Instagram, on Twitter. Larry and I are both there. Larry Nemecek and Ali Mattu are our names. And we will be back next week. We don't know what we're going to be discussing because we don't know what's happening on next week's episode of Lower Decks, but we promise it'll be fun. It'll be mental healthy, and we'll be here. So until then, live long and prosper, folks.
Trek well, everybody.